News 5 has received a leaked copy of this memo, dated February 20th, from Director of Public Prosecution Cheryl Lynn Vidal to the head of the National Crimes Investigation Branch. The memo is, quite frankly, damning, but it sheds valuable insight on what has seemed to be absolute protection of former Minister of State DPP Penner and perhaps other high-ranking UDP politicians. In the memo, the DPP is responding to a request by the police for her perusal and advice on the investigation into the Immigration Department. The tone is set early when the DPP states that she has perused the files, but, quote, "I am in an utter quandary on what advice I can possibly render," end quote. The DPP notes that the investigation seems to have been centered on how immigration files were leaked from the Department of Immigration, rather than around the actual content of the files. That, of course, comes as no surprise to anybody who has been following the so-called police investigation. In fact, says the DPP, none of the files provided by Mr. Saldiva have ever been included, which means that she has not been privy to them. From her next comments, it is clear that the holding back of those files was deliberate rather than an oversight. In what is an astonishing and disturbing disclosure, the DPP refers to a statement by the investigating officer, ASP Julio Valdez. Valdez wrote, quote, "After the documents were examined, it was observed that several nationalities were approved by immigration to individuals without meeting the criteria for approval. Yet, they were processed and approved," end quote. To borrow the PM's words, that is most certainly a smoking gun. But what follows next is the bullet itself. ASP Valdez continues to state that, quote, "After follow-up was done on this and questions asked about these discrepancies, this line of the investigation did not continue due to instructions. No other follow was made. It remained as is," end quote. From the tone of the memo, the DPP was not amused and asks immediately for the source of those instructions. She states that, quote, "The information on the file suggests that offenses may have been committed at the Immigration Department. I am unable to advise further since no files have been forwarded and the investigation in relation to that issue, at least, according to the officer's own words, was halted," end quote. The DPP ends by asking the NCIB to indicate whether the Belize Police Department will proceed with an investigation to determine whether anyone can be charged for the irregularities identified by Valdez. She also asks that the files be forwarded to her for a proper assessment. Mike Rodon for News 5.